Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about a John Moran strategy that he came out with called the feeder search strategy. So using a maximize clicks search campaign as well as a broad tCPA or tROAS campaign to ultimately be able to scale and to get better CPCs. So ultimately, I'm going to go through the whole setup of how to do this. There's been a lot of people that have tried this strategy and have failed. And so I wanted to do a step-by-step on how exactly to do this, as well as just talk about my setup and recent results that I've been able to get with a home cleaning company. So we can see here that we spent about 25% less, and then ultimately, 3 more conversions, and then from 105 down to 63 cost per conversion. Real conversion value went up from 1,600 all the way up to 2,200. And then the ROAS went from 117 to 259. And so this is some really cool results that I've been seeing. Ultimately, from the 13th, that's when I took over the account and decided to deploy this strategy. These are custom columns that I've created based on the actual conversions that really matter. And so I'm going to walk through which campaigns to create and ultimately how to set primary conversions, which ones to set the primary conversions for engagement versus the real conversions, and how to go through this setup start to finish. And we can also see that the average CPC here went from 1154 down to 557. And so it does, in fact, work to decrease the CPC, but also get higher quality and better results. Hey everyone, this is Artur MacLellan, and I've actually become the guy that agencies hire when they get stuck with your ad account. This is the Google Ads and Meta Ads Strategies podcast and YouTube channel where I actually talk about how to grow your business. These ad platforms are constantly changing, so I not only go through strategies that I'm currently using, but actually challenges that I've faced through many of these ad accounts that I manage. So most of my content, I'm actually sharing my screen and walking through how to practically diagnose and make decisions. So if you're listening on this podcast, make sure you hop over to the YouTube channel so that you can watch along. If you haven't already, make sure you leave a review, subscribe, share so that these platforms push this out to more people who are trying to figure out the complexities of driving traffic and how to actually grow their business. If you're not familiar with this strategy, it actually comes from John Moran, who is working with Tier 11, and I'll actually have the link below so that you can actually see the video where he talks about why he did this and his case study on how he went about it and what the results he had. But if you're looking to figure out how to do this, then I recommend just continuing to watch this. There's a couple things that you should be careful when deploying this strategy. So make sure it's search campaigns. I've actually talked to a couple of people who've tried this on shopping and it just hasn't worked. I've tried it on shopping. It just hasn't worked at this point so far. I'm actually testing some maximize clicks shopping campaigns with a performance max campaign, and I'm really early in being able to see the results of this, but I'm excited to be able to see how this continues to progress. So make sure it's a search campaign. Number 2, you're dealing with high CPCs. So if you are dealing with an industry that just has outrageous amounts of cost when it comes to CPC, then this might be something you want to try and deploy. A third reason why you should use this strategy is you can't scale out of tCPA or target ROAS, and your existing search impression share is below 80% and your click share has not maxed out. So just make sure that you look at those columns and make sure you're not at 100%. There's certainly some campaigns that I run right now that are at 98% search impression share and 82% click share, and that's very intentional. So just make sure that you check that out and don't deploy this strategy if you've already maxed things out. The other reason would be if you're switching between manual CPC, maximize clicks, and can't get conversions, and you're using high intent keywords, and you're just like struggling to actually get conversions. This concept of, do you want clicks or do you want conversions? And if you use manual CPC or maximize clicks, then you will not really necessarily get the conversions, but you will get high intent traffic, but other competitors will scoop up the conversion. So this is getting ahead and getting in front of those people by tacking on a broad match automated bidding strategy on top of it. You should already have a history of conversions already, so make sure that you're not just starting off a new account and deploying the strategy. And the other thing is, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, how these bidding strategies works, I would probably proceed with caution. Yeah, it could possibly be a big disaster. The tracking template that I typically like to use in my Google search campaigns is this right here. And I'll actually add this in the notes so that you can copy that, but make sure you change out your campaign name so that it's accurate. This is so that you can track how things are actually going on in the back end. First of all, I just wanted to go through this kind of visual of how to set this up, and then we're actually going to get into the Google Ads dashboard, and I'm going to actually walk through setting this up. Make sure when you start this campaign and this strategy, you take the 10 to 15 of your highest converting keywords and create your first campaign. So make sure that these keywords are high intent. You want to make sure that the maximize clicks campaign is going to give you the highest intent searches. So make sure that these keywords, if someone types that into Google and they find you, that it makes sense. And so this is the structure. You have one search campaign with exact match keywords, and you're using the maximize clicks strategy with no cap. And then you'll want to just kind of optimize from there. Make sure from the conversion goals that you set it to a conversion event that you don't want to optimize for. So using Google hosted conversion event, YouTube engagements. I'm actually using the Google form hosted by Google, and it's because it's an active goal that Google can go after, but it's not going to fire, and it's not necessarily telling Google that by inflating with the values of the conversion that it's important to us. That's how you kind of keep the CPCs lower. Make sure you set your marketing objective to leads or sales, and then you'll want to duplicate that first campaign and do a search campaign, set it to broad, set a target ROAS or target CPA on it. Make sure that the keywords are changed to broad match and give it some time. You'll also want to change your conversion event to the goals that you actually want to optimize for. So this could be form fills, calls, purchases, whatever makes sense for your business. The other thing is creating these custom columns. You'll actually want to create them so that you can see the conversions coming in through the maximize clicks campaign. Because remember, you're not setting the conversion actions that we want to optimize for, so it's not going to be in the conversions column. So you'll want to set up these custom columns so that you can actually see what's happening in both campaigns. So I've got real ROAS here, real CPA, real conversions, and real conversion value that I created. Real conversions is all conversions. Select that in the custom columns portion, and then select the conversion actions that actually matter to your campaign and to your business. And if you're not seeing what I'm seeing here, I've got a nice visual of exactly how I set it up, and I'll go through this later on in the tutorial as well. So the real conversions will be all conversions. You'll want to select that. And then real CPA will be cost divided by all conversions, and obviously the conversion actions that matter to you. Real conversions value is the third one that you custom column. So you'll want to do cost divided by all conversion value. And the fourth one is real ROAS, which is just going to be all conversions value divided by cost. So make sure that you set those up and you can see those and view those. And, also make sure you talk with your client or business owner, whoever it is that you have to report to. Just make sure that they understand what you're doing here and that you're intentionally taking the conversions, you're hiding the conversions from Google in that campaign. It can be fairly confusing. And if you're not on the same page with the people that you're working with, if you're an agency or if you're working for a business, whatever it may be, you just want to make sure that that is right and you are in alignment on this. The last thing to mention here is that you'll want to make sure that this campaign here is set at 1/5 or 1/4 of your total budget. So if you've got a total budget of $100, then the Maximize Clicks campaign will get about $20 and the broad campaign will get about $80. If you want this nice kind of handy sheet that I have here in front of me that I created with all of this information, just send me a comment, send me a message, and I'd be happy to get that sent over to you. And I just would love to see how this strategy is going to work for you. So now we're going to go on and I'm going to actually walk through how to set this up within Google Ads. Here we are in a campaign. Typically, you'll either want to choose a leads or sales objective. You'll want to add in a conversion action that is active, but is ultimately not necessarily going to fire. So like a YouTube engagements or YouTube channel subscriptions. There's also some Google form submissions. Make sure that those are active, but ultimately they won't necessarily fire. And then remove the purchase goal. Continue. This will only work for a search campaign. Lots of people have been trying it for a shopping campaign, but given the fact that there's the high, medium, and low structure, a lot of people have been struggling, including John himself at this point in time, to actually make it work and be able to spend in both campaigns. You'll want to use website visits. I'm just going to use this company, and then we'll be able to just kind of name it whatever we want. I'm just going to name this search, and we'll start with the Maximize Clicks campaign here. So then we'll want to choose the bidding strategy on clicks. We don't need to do a maximize cost per click limit at this point in time. You might want to set that down the road, and then make sure that search network and display network are deselected. And then if you're using, working with a local company, you want to use geo-targeting and presence people in or regularly in. Select a custom audience, make sure it's observation, and then optimize for best performing ads, and then set a ad schedule if the company's typically receiving phone calls from a certain amount of time. Add in a campaign URL option. I typically like to do a tracking template that makes sure that I can see on the back end, CRM, whatever it may be, see which campaign things are actually coming from. And then we'll do next. I typically, at this point in time, don't love the AI generated stuff. It's just not coming up with great copy, in my opinion, especially for businesses where Google doesn't really know much about it. But ultimately, you're going to want to do stuff that is very high intent, emergency plumber near me. And you can see here that it's actually coming in as broad match. We're going to need to change that to exact match, because anytime you're using Maximize Clicks, you want to use an exact match keyword, or else it's just going to be very broad and it's going to give you a lot of really irrelevant traffic. So click next, and then you'll want to set your Maximize Clicks campaign to 1/5 of the overall budget. So let's just do $20 if the daily budget is $100. And then we are just going to publish this campaign. I'm just going to go in and pause this real quick because I don't want it to start running. All right. So we're going to go into the campaign, go into the ad group and the keywords, and we are going to want to bring in the exact match keywords that are very high intent. So for a plumbing company, emergency plumber near me is probably going to be very good. I would imagine that the CPC is going to be relatively high. Yeah, $80. Sometimes areas, it'll be even higher than that. Plumbing near me. Some really kind of interesting ways to do it would be, using locations. So inserting the locations dynamically. and then being able to go after those specific keywords. So let's do plumbing, plumber. I'm located in State College, PA. So I'm just going to put that in. All right. So there's nothing here, but I would honestly still kind of put in the location because there's going to be searches for it. All right. So making sure that these are all exact match and then save them. And then ultimately maximize clicks, exact match, very high intent keywords, and you'll want to check your search terms after it starts running. Okay, so this campaign is pretty much done. The key components here are, just to kind of review them, making sure that your campaign objective is engagements, making sure that it's leads or sales that you're going after, making sure that these are deselected, and then making sure that your presence in, kind of the normal things that you want to make sure your campaign is set up for. And then making sure you have campaign URL options. All right, so you'll want to duplicate this campaign. So you'll just select it and then go to copy, and then you'll go to paste. Pause new campaign, and then we'll just let it load. All right, so here it is. We're going to want to change the name and then also change the URL parameters from engagement to the things that you actually want to optimize for. So if you are working with call rail metrics or, whatever conversion objective that you ultimately want to get, you want to make sure that you change this campaign to that. And then we're going to set this as a tCPA campaign, and we'll do broad. So we're going to want to make sure that all the keywords are actually in broad match, because that's particularly when it can perform well. Leads or sales objective, good. This is all good here. Same locations. One thing that I failed to mention actually when I was recording this was for this broad campaign using maximize conversions, tCPA, target ROAS, you want to make sure that you actually set 80% of the budget, 75 to 80% of the budget. So if you've got a total budget of $100, you'll want to do about $75 to about $80. And make sure you set it at that so that the maximize clicks campaign is about 20 to 25% of your overall budget. So make sure you don't miss this step. Then you're going to want to change the bidding strategy to conversions or conversion value. So you want to set a target CPA that is similar to what you've received in the past, or, ultimately what your goal is, and just kind of tweak it from there. Conversion value, and then you can set a target return on ad spend. So, this is particularly saying I should set a target for 2,300, but really set it to what you think is going to work. And typically looking at the last 30 days is a good indicator of what you should shoot for. If you have conversion value but don't set a target, it's automatically going to go after a 200% return on ad spend. Now, if you're doing lead gen, then I recommend adding values or uploading leads with values to them so that Google can understand how valuable this is. If you're dealing with, e-commerce, then obviously you'll want those to auto-populate. But if you don't assign valuable, data to the leads, if you just set everything at 0, then you're just going to want to typically use a, conversions bidding strategy with a tCPA versus a conversions value. So just kind of something to note there. And then use a tCPA. I'm just going to set it at $50. In this case, I'm going to save that, and then we're going to go in, and we would, want to make sure that you change the tracking template to this campaign, and everything else is good here. Then once you do that, then just going to have to find it again. Then you go over to the search campaign. Okay, so for all of these keywords, you're going to want to change them from exact match to broad match. And I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking, but ultimately using broad match with a good tCPA goal, as long as Google understands your audience and who's in market, is actually relatively strong. So I'm going to not keep the original keywords. I'm just going to change them to broad match. Okay, so now these are broad match and pretty much ready to go. The bidding strategy has changed. Now, the question is, do you take out search terms and, put in negatives? And we tested this. I tested this in this campaign from this day to this day, and the results just were worse in the broad match campaign from a CPA standpoint when we had the negatives in there. Not by a ton, but by enough that, the value was much less. So when you're employing negatives into campaigns that have broad match, just test both, see what works. We had several negative keyword lists that we applied, and ultimately not having the negatives actually worked better for broad match for the overall business goals. Now, were there some irrelevant traffic or things that were kind of questionable? Yes, but ultimately, after talking with the business owner, this is what we care about here. And so he was okay with us going back to not having those negative keywords in there because it ultimately resulted in better performance. Now, the reason why I think that this is because ultimately, maximize conversions, this automated bidding strategy, it's not about the keyword, it's about the user and where they are in regards to intent for the services that you are providing and you're advertising for. So ultimately, it's just looking at, has this person searched something similar to this, and are they still in market over the last 7 or so days? And so that's what it's taking and going from there. Quick pause here. Just so you know, I'm actually a dad and I have a lovely, lovely son who actually just woke up from nap and is crying during this next portion. So I'm so sorry about the crying in the background, but I wanted to make sure that that everything's fine. I just have a wonderful toddler that just woke up from nap. So ultimately, you got to kind of think about it as, is this tCPA, tROAS target meeting my goals? And if it's not, then you want to kind of reassess. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is actually creating these custom conversions columns. So ultimately, you're going to want to go to your columns and then scroll all the way down to custom columns. And you're going to want to set up these 4 different columns. So real conversions, and you can kind of use any name that you want, but I just used real just so that we can just kind of look at that and whatnot. But you want to do an all conversions, and then you want to add in all of the conversion actions that are actually important to your business. And so just adding that for real conversions, and then you'll want to do real conversion value. So you'll just want to select all conversion value, and then again, select all of the conversion actions that work that you want to track for your business. And then you're going to want to go to real CPA, and this is where you divide the cost by all of the conversions, the first one that we created, and then create that. And then you'll want to go through and do real ROAS, and this is ultimately if you're adding values to the leads and whatnot. So you'll do all conversion value with this specific conversion actions chosen, divided by the cost. And then you'll be able to make sure you select these and then bring them into your column set. And then you'll be able to look and see, even within the maximize clicks, even though we are reporting nothing, because ultimately the primary objective is engagements, we are ultimately being able to track that this is actually bringing in conversions at $64. Time period before it was actually 48, and it is bringing in valuable conversions with real ROAS targets. So I think it's just important to kind of note that bringing in these columns will help you to see the effectiveness of your maximize clicks campaign in addition to your tCPA broad or tROAS broad campaign. So to kind of review, maximize clicks, exact match keywords, don't need to set a maximum CPC, in the beginning, if you feel that you need to, eventually feel free to do that, but I have not done that. And then you'll just want to go ahead and check these search terms and make sure that, these are all the right search terms, super highly relevant keywords coming through. So this is all very good. And then for the broad match campaign, you'll want to make sure that it's all broad match and that you set a tCPA target, automated bidding, or a tROAS target, maximize conversion value with a tROAS target. And then, take the search term with a grain of salt, because ultimately you're going for the business metrics, the things that the business cares about in regards to the goals, not necessarily the search terms. So it's going to be semi-relevant, but it's going to be odd, some things that come through. So ultimately, this is how you kind of do the setup. Make sure you set up those custom columns. Make sure you have the right conversion objectives for each campaign. And I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts and your experiences with how this strategy is going for you.